Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we learn about a super keyword. What is the use of super and where we can use it? Super is basically used to refer to the parent class. We have already studied about the inheritance concept, in which the parent class usually inherit most of the capabilities to the child class, and that includes the data member and the member functions. So through the child object, we can use the functions or the members of a parent class. Okay, whenever there is a situation when there is a confusion between the names of the data members or the member functions, then in order to differentiate between those names, we use a super keyword. Okay, let me elaborate a little bit more. Then we'll discuss it in more detail with few examples. For example, there is a parent class. It has some function that is named as show. So show function is there in our parent class. Similarly, there is a child class that also has the same function name, that is show function. So when we'll call the show function through the child object, so which function should be called? So of course, in that case, the object always prefer to its own function. So the function of the child will always be called. Okay, when we want to differentiate between those two show functions, then we use a super keyword. Super will always refer to the parent class. So it is like a reference point or a reference variable that always refer to the parent class. So let's discuss it in more detail with few more examples. This is basically a reference point objects that are used to create a reference between the object and the function or the member. Member can be the data member or the member function. For example, there we have one class person, and we have instantiated it with the object name P. So in that case, we are not creating that object through the new pointer. So that's why it will be holding a null value in it. So when we refer to that point, P is equal to new of person. So in that case, we are actually creating a new object, and a default constructor will be called, and of course this P object will be allocated a memory in your RAM. So when we refer a function that or a method through this object, that is P dot set name, so actually this function belongs to that object, and this object is basically representing this class. So that means this set name function is present in this class. So it will always refer to its own function. That is a default procedure. So far, we have not actually discussed anything about the super. So in that case, we can reuse the classes. For example, I will talk a little bit about the inheritance thing that we have already discussed, but we'll get the overview it so that we can easily understand the super keyword or the use of the super keyword. Suppose we want to define a class student which has a name, age, CNIC address, and school GPA. These are the data members of that class. Okay, we can redefine everything, or we can reuse a person class. For example, a person class that already has such kind of things in it, that is a name, age, CNIC address, such kind of things. So instead of redefining all these data members in that student thing, so we can reuse this class and we can inherit this class to the student. So all the capabilities or the features of that person will be inherited to the students. So we don't have to redefine these members again. All right. So this is basically can be achieved by using the inheritance concept. As we have already discussed it in more detail, that in Java we can inherit using keyword extends. So in that case, as you can see, a student class extends person. So whatever the members are there in the person will be inherited to the students. The members of that class becomes a part of student then. So in the student class, we are only defining the school and GPA, and rest the age, CNIC, and address, these kind of things will be automatically inherited to the students. They also become a part of the student class. So this is basically the inheritance concept that we have already discussed. Where comes the super keyword then? Super keyword is the reference variable which is used to refer the immediate parent class object. So whenever you will use a super, first of all, you need to understand the super is a keyword. So whenever you will type it, it will turn blue because the blue words, they always refer to the default words defined by the compiler. So super is a keyword whenever you type it. And this is basically a reference variable, the reference to which to the parent class. Super always refer to the parent class. Whenever you create an instance of subclass, an instance of the parent class is created implicitly, which is referred by the superclass variable, reference variable. Okay. In inheritance, you have already seen that, for example, we have a parent class and it is inherited to the child class. That is, we call it a subclass. So when you will create object of the subclass, whatever the members are there, they will become a part uh, of that object, which is actually the object of the subclass. So in that case, we can say that there is one superclass that is encapsulated in the subclass object. So it will be actually embedded in it. When need of the super keyword. So we'll see the usage of the super keyword where we can use it. Whenever the derived class inherit the base class features, there is a possibility that base class features are similar to derived class features, and JVM gets an ambiguity, right? For example, now we are actually going to learn that where we can use a super keyword. For example, in the beginning of the lecture that I have actually explained that, for example, there are two features or the members or the methods which have the same name. For example, in the parent class and the child class. So in that case, whenever you will call it, so the JVM is basically a Java virtual machine that executes your Java related things. So it will get there will be the ambiguity for the JVM. Why? Because it will have the same names. The show, for example, that I have given you example. In the parent class and the child class, they both have the show function. So in that case, the JVM basically there will be an ambiguity in it. So how to resolve it? You need to use a super. For example, if you want to refer to the child object, so you can refer it to through the child class object, and whenever you want to use to refer to the parent class, then you can put the super keyword before that thing. For example, super dot show. So it will be automatically referring to the parent class function. So this with this thing you can actually remove this ambiguity. Okay, in order to differentiate between the base class features and the derived class features must be preceded by a super keyword, as I have already explained you. So if you want to remove that ambiguity, you need to use a super keyword. And whenever you will use a super, for example, super dot function name. So in that case, super will be referring to the parent class function. So parent class function will be automatically executed. Where we can use the super keyword. Basically, there are three different situations where we can use a super keyword. Super can be used to refer immediate parent class instance variable. Number one. For example, uh, if you write, for example, there is a situation in which we have a parent class and a child class. So the parent class, it has a member name, for example, age, in the same case that we have actually explained a bit in the earlier slides. For example, there is a parent class, it has a member age, and there's a derived class or the subclass or the child class. It also has a data member with the name age. So in both cases, when we'll create the object of the child class and we'll write the age, definitely there will be the ambiguity. So in that case, we'll see there are a few concepts here. We call it overriding thing. Overriding means the object will give the priority to its own functions. In that case, there is no error. Keep in mind, if for example there is a situation in which the both the parent class and the child class, they have the same members, same name members. For example, they have the same function name like a show. So when you will call it through the object dot show, in that case there is no error in it. In that case, it definitely your procedure or the function will be executed, but we need to know which function will be executed, the parent function or the child function. So in that case, if we are calling that function through the child class object, so it will give it to the function of its own class. So it will give the priority to its own function. So the child class function will be executed. So in that case, we're discussing that where we can use a super keyword. In the super, basically, when we have ambiguity between the child, between the parent class and the child class, and they both have a same data member, for example, age or the name. So in that case, we can use a super keyword to differentiate between the child member and the parent class member. So that is number one situation. So another situation where we can use the super keyword is by invoking the parent class method. For example, the parent class and the child class, they both have the same function name or the method name. So in that case, wherever we'll use a super dot function name, so definitely we are referring to the parent class function. So in that case, the parent class function will be executed. Third situation where we can use a super is we can call a constructor. For example, we want to invoke the constructor of parent class. So in that case, we can write a super, and these brackets, definitely it is referring to the default constructor. So in that case, the parent constructor will be called, right? So these are the three different situations where you can use a super keyword. Okay, let's discuss these three situations one by one. First of all, use super refer immediate instance variable. That is the variable we are referring. Let's discuss it with this example. For example, we have a class vehicle. In that case, this class has two members, make and color. These are the two data members. We have this default constructor in which the make and the color, they both are actually being uh, initialized, right? We have another class that is a car, and that is being extended with the vehicle, right? So this is the parent class and car is the child class. So through that relationship. So in the car class, we have two more variables that belongs to the car type and color. As you can see, the color right here and here, they both are same, right? The same syntax, same the data type, but this one is protected and this one is the private. So private means that it is not accessible outside of the class. So protected means it is accessible within this the derived class only. Okay. So that in that case, as you can see, the car type and the color, they both are being actually being initialized. So the parent color is initialized with the silver, and the color in the child class is being initialized with white. Okay, whenever in that function, that is a show function, it is there within this class, that is the child class. So show color, in that we are referring to the color, and another one is super dot color. So as you can see, these are the two different situations. If we do not write the super before that color, so that means it is referring to the child class member, that is this color. There is no ambiguity, there is no error in it, both can have the same name members, right? So the question is, or the confusion is, which particular data member will be called, either the parent or the child one. So in that case, if we do not write a super keyword before it, so we are referring to the child class data member. So in that case, we have actually appended super keyword before that color, super dot color. So in that case, we are referring to the base class data member. You got the point? So that was the first situation, or where we can use a super with the instance variable. Right. The second situation where we can use a super keyword, the super can be used to invoke the parent class method. So in that situation, for example, we have a parent class and a child class, and they both have the same function name. So in that case, we can actually differentiate between the super function, between the parent class function and the child class function through the super keyword. The super keyword can also be used to invoke or call the parent. It should use in case of method overriding. Method overriding is one concept, and we'll discuss it in more detail in our upcoming slides. The basic thing is that the overriding. Overriding means method related to the function, and overriding. Overriding means to take a right, right? So in that case, for example, there is a situation between the parent class and the child class, and they both have a same name. So the object of the child will actually give the priority, or it will override the method if they have the same name to its own kind, or for example the one that belongs to the child class object. So it will actually override, or it will give the priority to its own function, not the parent function. So it should use in the case of method overriding. In other words, super keyword should be used when the base class method name and derived class method name have the same name. So in that case, we can use a super keyword. Let's discuss it with the help of an example. Super can be used to invoke the parent class method. For example, the same class, we have a vehicle and we have a car. So in this case, as you can see, we have a show function in the parent class, and there is a relationship between the child and the parent class uh, defined through this keyword extends. So in that case, as you can see, we have the same function, and this also has the same function. So whenever there is a situation in which we have the same name of the functions and same signature, this forms the signature. That makes it's the access type or the return type or the number of the arguments. So in that case, they both are same. So this is the situation in which the both are actually have the same name and the same signature. So this function actually is printing its own members, make and the color. And this function, the child function, in this case, we are actually calling a show function as well through the super keyword. So if we do not write this super dot this prefix before this function, so it will automatically call itself. So it will become a recursive process. So it will be repeating just in case if we do not write the super before it. So if, for example, we want to call the parent function right here, so we'll have to append the super keyword here. So by writing a super dot show function, so that means we are referring to the base class method. So in this situation, as you can see, we have declared an object through the class car, and car is basically the child class. So through the child class, we have actually declared an object that is focus. So through the focus, when we'll call a show function, focus dot show, definitely the both functions are same. If, for example, assume that this show function is not here, so in that case, this show function will be called of the parent class. So in this situation, when we have the same function here and in the parent, the child, so in that case, it will definitely give the priority to its own function. So the child class function will be called, and in that function, uh, when it will come here, it will actually be redirected to the parent class function right here, the show. When it will execute, it will come back to same location, and then it will execute the rest part of that function. So the procedure will be executed. So in that case, as you can see, we have actually differentiated between this function and the parent function through the super keyword. That was the second situation. So in the third situation, for example, you can use a super keyword for calling the constructors. If you want to call the constructor of a parent class, then you can use a super keyword for it instead of writing the class name. So let's discuss it with the help of this example. As you can see, we have this situation, the vehicle being inherited to the car. So in that case, as you can see, the car has a default constructor here. The vehicle has its own constructor. We have another parameterized constructor. As you can see, this is the constructor representing the same class name. So this is the parameterized accepting two arguments. So in that case, this we have already learned about it. This basically referring is like a pointer referring to the current object of this class, right? So we are actually assigning values to those data members. Similarly, we have another parameterized constructor right here, and this is for the child class, and it is also accepting few arguments. This is a parameterized constructor. In that case, as you can see, we have written a super make and color. So this is the situation in which whenever we will create an object of the child, it's not shown here, but for example, we have actually instantiated this class, and through the object of this class, it will call the parameterized constructor, and whenever it will reach in that constructor, from here it will call the parent function, parent class constructor, and that is a parameterized constructor is defined right here. So that constructor will be called when it will complete its execution, it will come back and it will assign its own data member. Through this, as you can see, we can call the parent class constructor as well through the super. So this is the third usage. So in that lecture we have learned about the super keyword. In the next lecture, or the next part of this lecture, we learn about the method overloading and method overriding. Thank you very much.